the traffic of the city, even if they are the only Italians speaking. Of course, not the only one, because the one who was very functional because he had to talk on the other. So just 10 minutes of Russian and then the Congress will come. Thank you. Un po' in inglese, cercatevi i due relatori, il professor Marchi e il professor Simoni, sono un po' in ritardo perché non si riesce a trovare un taxi a causa della pioggia romana. Saranno qui penso 10 minuti ancora un po' di pazienza.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. On behalf of the Bhaktivedanta Institute and the Second International Congress on Life and its Origin, we would like to welcome all of our distinguished guests and thank you all for coming.
Il Bhaktivedanta Institute ha organizzato il secondo congresso mondiale sulla vita e la sua origine. Vi vogliamo ringraziare tutti per essere venuti e ringraziamo tutti i nostri studenti ospiti.
Before we start, we have a letter from the General Secretary President of the Italian Republic. It says, "The Second World Congress on Life and its Origin, Exploration from Science and Various Spiritual Religious Traditions, represents an occasion to strengthen our commitment towards the life's values of solidarity and respect for human rights. The confrontation and dialogue at this conference must be the instrument to realize a new humanism, one that is founded on peace and integration of the diverse identities of the world's peoples. In this same spirit, the President of the Italian Republic expresses his profound appreciation for the Bhaktivedanta Institute and offers his cordial salutation to the illustrious speakers, to the event organizers, and to all the participants of the Congress. To this, too, I append my personal salutation for the same. Gaetano Giffoni, General Secretary President of the Italian Republic."
Il Presidente della Repubblica Italiana, Sua Eccellenza Carlo Pellicciani, ha mandato al Bhaktivedanta Institute per il secondo congresso internazionale sulla vita e la sua origine il seguente messaggio legale. Il secondo congresso mondiale, Life and its Origin, Exploration from Science and Various Spiritual and Religious Traditions, rappresenta un'occasione per rafforzare l'impegno verso i valori della solidarietà e del rispetto dei diritti umani. Il confronto e il dialogo devono essere gli strumenti per realizzare un nuovo umanesimo fondato sulla pace e sull'integrazione tra le diverse identità nei popoli. Con questi sentimenti, il Presidente della Repubblica esprime vivo apprezzamento al Bhaktivedanta Institute e invia agli illustri relatori, agli organizzatori dell'evento e a tutti i partecipanti un saluto cordiale, cui unisco il mio personale. Gaetano Giffoni, Segretario Generale della Presidenza della Repubblica.
So we are very fortunate to have with us, here in this beautiful and historical city of Rome, over 37 speakers and participants. Over the course of these next 4 days, we will hear different perspectives regarding the profound inquiries of life and its origin.
Siamo molto fortunati di avere con noi tutti i professori e relatori e partecipanti in questa bellissima e storica città di Roma. Nel corso di questi 4 giorni ascolteremo differenti punti di vista riguardo alle profonde ricerche sulla vita e la storia.
Today, as a prelude to our conference, let us begin with the meaning and the purpose of life, scientific and spiritual perspectives.
Oggi, come preludio della conferenza, iniziamo con il significato e lo scopo della vita, punti di vista scientifici e spirituali.
We are very fortunate to have as our chairman today Dr. T.V. Singh. Dr. Singh hails from India. He is a scientist and spiritualist, as well as an active participant in developing a dialogue between science, spirituality, and religion. He is also very active in interreligious dialogue for world peace. He has organized several international congresses around the world. Dr. Singh holds a PhD in physical organic chemistry from the University of California in the United States of America. He has been so kind to organize this important congress here in Rome, in one of the most historical and significant cities of the world.
Siamo molto fortunati oggi di avere il nostro direttore della conferenza, il nostro chairman, il dottor T.V. Singh. Il dottor Singh viene dall'India, è uno scienziato uno spiritualista ed è anche un attivo partecipativamente nello sviluppo di un dialogo tra scienza, spiritualità e religione. È anche molto attivo nel dialogo interreligioso per la pace del mondo. Ha organizzato diversi congressi internazionali in tutto il mondo. Il dottor Singh ha ricevuto un PhD in chimica fisica organica dall'Università della California negli Stati Uniti d'America. È stato oggi così gentile da organizzare questo importante congresso qui a Roma, una delle città più storiche e importanti di tutto il mondo.
Will you please welcome me in joining Dr. T.V. Singh? Welcome him.
So, first of all, I think there are, two sessions. So, several chairs are put here in this stage. So, I would like to request that the first half speakers to be on the stage, and I'd like to call upon, we have Professor Samonti, and we have His Holiness Silas Hawati, and then Venerable Geshe Sudam Tianchu, and we have Professor Vittorio Marchi. Please come on stage.
Ho invitato i partecipanti di questa conferenza, il Presidente del professor Marco Francesco Pistoni, il professor Giuseppe Sermonti, l'imam Samir Khan, la sua santità Saidas Babaji, Vengesh Goran Chanchu, dell'autorità regionale del Dio Tibetano, Ascolti tutto le mani. Scusate, adesso bisogna arrivare verso le 11. So just a few words about this Congress. This Congress on Life and Dishonesty is organized here in this very beautiful city, Rome, primarily to explore the scientific as well as the spiritual aspects of life. And in this we are trying to focus on the origin, life's origin. And because the study of the life informs, and we all admit, that most important knowledge about human culture. And because it has so much implications that, especially in the present day, we have we're experiencing so much difficulties and with all this like wars and then the terrorist activities, and also the whole world is becoming also very small, in the sense that we can reach any one of us in any corner of this planet. So we are a pluralistic society, and we cannot remain isolated from each other, either religiously or culturally. So we have to learn how to live together and then try to share even the differences and our commonalities, and how to live together in a very peaceful and civilized manner. So we felt, all minds felt, that the study of the science of life, scientifically, or philosophically, or culturally, and it is the foundation of civilization. So for that reason, we have organized this conference. And we selected Rome, and the name of this conference goes Rome historically, and the 2,000 years of civilization you can see here in Rome, very significant and a very important city of the world. And also, that significance is because of the presence of the Vatican, the headquarters of the Roman Catholics, plays a very important role in the world. So we felt that discuss such a topic on life, its meaning, both the philosophical and scientific aspect, the Rome certainly is the perfect venue for such a discussion. Because today the scientific society, religion or God is not just taken very seriously.
But in the plus here, since everyone comes, but because the presence of the Vatican, so people are not so, let's say, frightened by discussing about God. And so we felt that Rome is a good place to begin. And therefore this Rome has been selected at the end of this conference. Our Council will summarize this a little bit, and in this case, you can sit.
Poche parole su questo congresso, dal titolo La vita e le sue origini. È stato organizzato in questa meravigliosa città di Roma per la sua importanza culturale e storica e per la presenza del Vaticano, che fa sì che i discorsi religiosi e spirituali non intimoriscano le persone. E questo studio dell'origine della scienza della vita, della sua origine, dai vari punti di vista filosofico, religioso, scientifico, in realtà è un fondamento della civilizzazione umana ed è ormai attuale nei conflitti moderni a cui stiamo assistendo.
So in this, the second half of this lecture includes, we have His Holiness Jerusalem from the Sikh Authority of Italy, and we have Professor Gianfranco Buseni, is a biologist as well as a member of the Jewish community of Rome. We have Professor Laura Poveda, a well-known scholar a biblical scholar, and we have Mr. Michael Primo, the well-known archaeologist in the United States, and we have Marco Gotti, that will be the next half of this discussion. So I'm saying that this morning's session is entitled The Meaning and Purpose of Life. So this is the prelude for the Congress, the main Congress that begins tomorrow at the Protopopeka Hall. That also begins at 9 o'clock in the morning. And so it is a kind of an overall discussion regarding life and its meaning.
Ha presentato i vari esponenti questa mattina, il professor Michael Cremo il professor Giuseppe Sermonti, di Manu Samuel Calvi della comunità Sikh, e appunto oggi discuteremo con loro il significato, il loro scopo della vita, tema che poi sarà ripreso nei prossimi giorni del congresso che sarà tenuto in Campidoglio, la sala della Fotomotica.
Also included in the second half of today's discussion is Mr. Abdul Hadi. He's the General Secretary of the Italian Muslim Association. So he'll join the second half of this discussion.
Abbiamo anche la presenza dell'imam Samuel Calvi, autorità religiosa islamica della Moschea di Centocelle di Roma.
I'd like to call upon Professor Joseph Sermonti. He's a well-known geneticist in Italy and a very accomplished scholar in the field of mathematics, and so he has contributed significantly in the field of science and genetics. Also, he has a tremendous other interest in other fields of concerning the life's activities. So we are extremely pleased to have Professor Sermonti here with us. So I'd like to call upon Bhaktivedanta to actually present is a cost, and this regard life, its meaning and the purpose, and the science, and the spiritual perspective. Just someone can.
Abbiamo la fortuna di avere con noi il professor Giuseppe Sermonti, che è un rinomato professore di genetica e studioso delle teorie di Darwin in Italia, che ci darà appunto la sua prospettiva dei temi che saranno analizzati oggi.
Good morning. I don't know if I have to speak Italian or English. Italian. Allora, buongiorno a tutti in italiano, good morning. Io parlerò dal punto di vista della scienza. Sono un genetista e non sono un teologo. Il mio discorso spero sia semplice e comprensibile. Ci sono molti problemi che la scienza non ha risolto. Noi non sappiamo curare il raffreddore, noi non sappiamo che cosa sono questi buchi neri, non sappiamo perché una mosca è la mosca e il cavallo è il cavallo. E non sappiamo vivere in pace. Tuttavia questi problemi possono essere risolti con ulteriori ricerche, con ulteriori approfondimenti col tempo.
So, Mr. Sermonti is presenting his point of view, scientific and spiritual point of view. And he's speaking about many oaths, many the science cannot solve many problems, many questions. Why the decline of force, for example? Why nature? What is the nature of black holes? Why isolation? And of course, we cannot use common code, and we can also not live, we are not able to live in peace in our modern society. So these are the unsolved problems.
Questo è dopo, questo non lo ancora detto. Accanto a questi problemi non risolti, ci sono altri problemi che sono insolubili, perché non hanno una possibile soluzione, almeno all'interno dei nostri paradigmi e dei nostri termini.
One not yet been solved, at least not, we cannot solve it in our terms of the science today. Unsolvable problems with the present paradigm and terms.
So, among these problems, tra questi problemi, ci sono i problemi delle origini, dell'universo, della vita, dell'uomo. Questi problemi non sono stati risolti e questi problemi non sono solubili con i nostri paradigmi, con i nostri schemi mentali.
Among this problem is the problem of the origin of the universe, of the origin of the light, of the origins of man, and this problem has not been solved and are unsolvable now with the present paradigm and term of science.
Noi non abbiamo modo di comprendere come possa l'universo essere nato dal nulla, senza nessuna forza direttiva, perché i paradigmi scientifici escludono l'esistenza di una forza trascendente, diciamo di Dio.
We cannot understand how the universe can be originated from the nothing, from the nil, and this is impossible to understand how the universe was born, because now in science there is no idea of transcendence.
Un famoso scienziato inglese, forse il più grosso divulgatore moderno della scienza biologica, è Richard Dawkins, che ha scritto l'orologiaio cieco e altre opere, non vi sto citando. Dawkins fa questa affermazione a cui noi ci ribelliamo. Comincia il suo libro L'orologiaio cieco con queste parole.
A famous scientist, English scientist, whose name is Dawkins, who wrote a very famous book whose name is The Blind
Watchman.
The Blind Watchman, who says, in these books, he says that
questo libro è stato scritto nella convinzione che la nostra esistenza fosse un tempo il massimo tra tutti i misteri, ma che oggi non sia aspettato, perché l'enigma è stato risolto. Il merito di questa impresa va riconosciuto a Darwin e Wallace, anche se noi continueremo per un po' di tempo a aggiungere note in calce a questa soluzione.
So the name of the book is The Blind Watchmaker, and he writes in this book, he says, this book was written in the conviction that our existence was one maximum of all mysteries, but that today it is no longer such, because the enigma was solved. The merit of this undertaking is to be recognized to Darwin and Wallace. Also, we will continue for a while to add footnotes to their solution.
E Dawkins ha prospettato un esperimento per provare la sua asserzione che attraverso la mutazione e la selezione si può ottenere qualunque forma, qualunque informazione. Ha fatto questo esperimento in un computer.
The scientist does, he made an experiment with the computer.
Ha messo nel computer circa 30 lettere a caso e poi ha dato a disposizione del computer che cambiasse queste lettere indipendentemente l'una dall'altra fino a raggiungere un verso di Shakespeare che dice così: methinks it is like a whistle. Penso che sia come una dominola.
He put the sentence from Shakespeare's Matins is it like a vessel?
Cambiando le lettere a caso, non è riuscito a ottenere nessuna cosa che somigliasse alla frase.
And by changing this letter by chance, he didn't obtain anything which was similar to this sentence.
Ha anche calcolato che per ottenere la frase a caso sarebbero occorsi miliardi di anni, molto più della metà dell'universo.
He calculated that for obtaining sentence by chance, it would have been billions and billions of years, many more than the age of the universe itself.
E allora ha usato un esperimento di introdurre nella memoria del computer la frase "Mathings is like a vessel".
So he had the idea to make an experience, so he put in the memory of the computer the sentence itself, Mathings is like a vessel.
Ecco, lui ha costruito le cose in modo che ogni volta che una lettera raggiungeva il suo giusto punto, il suo giusto posto, fosse bloccata e le altre continuassero a modificarsi.
So he put the order in the computer that every time a letter was put in the right place, the letter had to stay in that place without changing, and the other letter could change again.
In questo modo, in 64 generazioni, in pochi minuti, è riuscito a ottenere che il computer mostrasse la sua frase.
So in this way, he obtained that in a few minutes the computer could show this sentence.
Naturalmente questo è un trucco, un imbroglio, perché quella che lui chiama la mutazione cumulativa altro non è che un avvicinarsi della frase a una frase che già c'è.
So this was a trick because this kind of cumulative mutation was like a sentence. The sentence was already there, so it was like a trick.
L'orologiaio cieco non è affatto cieco, conosce dove deve arrivare e in effetti questa è la risposta alla pretesa di Dawkins. Si può ottenere un oggetto, una forma, un'informazione solo se sappiamo dove dobbiamo arrivare, cioè solo se questa informazione è già nelle cose.
So in this situation, the blind watchmaker is not so blind because he knows what is his goal, what his goal is, where he wants to go. So the concept is that we can get in science and information only if we know this information, only if we know where we want to go, what's the goal of our research. In this way we can obtain an information.
Qual è il punto a cui stiamo arrivando? Per risolvere i problemi che non si possono risolvere con i nostri paradigmi, con i nostri termini, dovremmo avviarci a cambiare questi paradigmi, cambiare questi termini e accogliere nuovamente nella scienza i termini che la scienza ha espulso, come la volontà, come un disegno, come un ordine e come, per dirlo con una sola parola, un Dio.
So if we want to understand some paradigms in the science, we have to, the only way to do it is to change those paradigms and to put new paradigms in the science. Paradigm to reconsider them, like a certain willingness in the universe, design and order, or just to spell it in one word, to consider the concept of God.
Vi voglio leggere una citazione da Robert Musil, l'uomo senza qualità, scritto nel 1956. Non si dimentichi che la mentalità scientifica è, in fondo, più religiosa di quella umanistica. Appena egli si destignasse di mostrarsi alla scienza nelle condizioni che essa prescrive per la sua esistenza, essa infatti gli si sottometterebbe. Mentre i nostri umanisti, se egli si manifestasse loro, troverebbero soltanto che il suo talento non è abbastanza originale e la sua visione del mondo non è abbastanza comprensibile per poterlo mettere sullo stesso piano con certi ingegni veramente divini.
So, I'm citing Robert Musil from The Man Without Qualities, and he said, "Do not forget that scientific mentality is after all more religious than the humanistic one. As soon as we would deem the condition that we prescribe for the recognition of his existence, it would indeed submit to it, while our humanists could only find that his talent is not enough original, and his worldview is not enough understandable to deserve being put on the same plane with some really divine intelligence."
Diceva Pasteur, la piccola scienza ci allontana da Dio, la grande scienza ci riporta a Dio.
Webster says that the little science bring us away from God, but the big science bring us closer to God again.
Devo concludere con questa frase di Max Born, uno dei più grandi fisici di questo secolo, che ha scritto: "Ho visto nell'atomo la chiave ai più profondi segreti della mente, ed esso mi ha rivelato la grandezza della creazione e il creatore."
Max Born said, "I saw in the atom the key to the deepest secret of nature, and it revealed to me the greatness of creation and the Creator."
La mia conclusione è nella speranza che la scienza restituisca all'umanesimo e alla politica le parole per tutti, per vivere nell'osso.
My hope is not science gives back to humanistic science and to politics the world war that have been lost.
Grazie.
a wonderful melody of Chasamohi. And I must like to appreciate his wonderful ideas and thoughts. There's a lot to contribute in this type of dialogue. So our next speaker is His Holiness Saidas Babaji. So he's a well-known religious leader in India and is the president of Sai Foundation International. And he's very active also in the interreligious dialogue for discussion of world peace and also how to live in peace and harmony among our communities. So he traveled in Europe and most pleased to have Holiness Saidas Babaji. I'd like to call upon Holiness Saidas Babaji.
Allora, ora avremo la fortuna di sentire la sua santità Saidas Babaji, che fa parte dell'autorità religiosa induista, presidente dell'organizzazione mondiale Sai Foundation dell'India, e lui si occupa di dialogo interreligioso e di ristabilire appunto la pace a livello mondiale, pace ed armonia a livello mondiale, e sta viaggiando appunto in Europa ed è venuto a presenziare questa nuova vita. Lo salutiamo tutti con un applauso. Scusate, volevo aggiungere che il dottor Sigri ringrazia sicuramente il meraviglioso intervento del professor Sermoni.
Honorable Chairman, Dr. T.V. Singh, honorable members of the Diet, brothers and sisters. The title of this talk is something that has kept philosophers and scientists pondering for ages together, the meaning and purpose of life. This quest is as old as man himself and shall continue till mankind exists on the face of this earth. Many streams of thought have evolved around this riddle, trying to solve it, yet sphinx-like its answer continues to evade the superficial examiner. Having realized that the meaning of life was not to be easily understood by merely examining the externals, the sages of yore turned their gaze inward and studied the inner universe that exists within each and every one of us. And in that quest, they were successful in not only understanding the inner, but also the outer. And thus they declared that the creation of the Creator, the universe, is divided in the following 9 parts: earth, water, fire, wind, space, time, direction, mind, and soul. Of these, earth, water, fire, wind, and space, representing the 5 elements together, form matter. This matter is governed by time and direction. The genesis of life begins with the entry of the soul into the matter, the embryo. The soul is considered as light because the senses, mind and intellect, etc. get enlightened by it, whereupon their movements occur or life starts, or I may say that growth then begins. Lord Krishna in chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita says, O son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates this entire universe, the living entity, one within the body, that is the matter, illuminates the entire body by consciousness. This signifies the birth of life when matter comes to vibrate
What then is life? The time spent on earth to complete the cycle of entry and exit of the soul is called life. This life may be compared to a journey, and like every journey, this journey of life too has a definite purpose. To comprehend the human experience in totality by bringing all areas of man's activities into consideration, to synthesize all his actions, to realize oneness of all creation, to dispossess himself of the notion of the limited self, and to embrace the truth of the all-pervasive known as the cosmic consciousness. From this realization dawns the ultimate truth: I am that consciousness itself, though fragmented now, being encased in the limited body. It is only through this act of putting together the synopsis of being that a meaning and purpose can be given to life and the life beyond, since it makes the individual a complete whole. Only the macro can explain the micro. The micro is incapacitated to do the same, and least of all science, in spite of its reification at the expense of religion. I say so because all the scientific theories about the development of the universe are at best guesses about the sequence of events which took place during the development. The scientist has always attributed the genesis of life to a single-celled living structure like the amoeba, which has evolved into the present multi-billion cell structure of man, thereby attempting to controvert the incontrovertible truth that is, the living entities in the world are the many reflections of the Supreme One. No doubt science has contributed much to the development of human life, but then there are large areas of deepest need that science has not been able to address. The reason for this incapacity lies in the basis of science itself. Science has its roots in hypothesis rather than those of synopsis, and hence falls short of answering the casual explanation to the inner query on the meaning of life, the question, where and how did it all start? Why things happen as they do? Scientists boast of having unraveled the mystery of creation, but they do not have true experience of the reality behind the phenomena. Each and every activity that takes place in this universe is full of wonder. When we observe carefully, we will be able to perceive the unseen hand of God at work. The famous scientist Louis Pasteur said, "The discoveries of science lead us closer to God." This fact is duly admitted by Albert Einstein, undoubtedly among the accredited geniuses of the yesterday when he wrote, "Quantum mechanics is very impressive, but an inner voice tells me that it is not yet the real thing. The theory produces a good deal, but hardly brings me closer to the secrets of the old one. I am at all events convinced that he does not play the dice." This confession only defines the limits of the physical world of scientists. If we observe closely, this frustration of the scientist lies in his incapacity to comprehend the reality in its totality. This statement is a recognition that there lies beyond the material universe another reality that apparently is beyond the perception of the telescope and the microscope. The scientist ventures to encapsulate the infinite in the finite, and this pursuit of narrow specialization centered on a single factor abstracts from the wholesomeness or completeness of the desired object. That there are two sets of entities in this world is undeniable. One that constantly comes into being exists and perishes, and one that continues on despite the changing panorama of the world. Proof of this is offered in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which also delineates which entity is where. One is in the realm of the scientist, the other accessible only to the one who embarks on an inner journey to comprehend the meaning and purpose of life. There are two classes of being in this world, the ephemeral and the eternal. In the material world, every living entity is perishable, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is immortal. As the physical sciences have their basis in matter, which is at best ephemeral, their pursuits too are ephemeral in nature. Therefore, the rejections and the developments being the hallmark of scientific adventures can never be considered absolute, for they are based on the relative truth of matter rather than the absolute truth. It is because of this that instead of answering the one fundamental question he started out to answer, the scientist ends up asking another question: what after this? What after this? The quest for the survival of the fittest blinds the scientist to arrival of the fittest as witnessed in the life of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Chaitanya Deva, who worked at the grassroots level through love. Mother Teresa, who brought smiles on the faces of the depressed and destitute, and Baba Amte, who endeavored hard to root out leprosy from the Indian subcontinent. These men and women were the living proofs of the attainability of the inner real. They had discovered the meaning and purpose of life, and what's more, they lived the truth that they discovered. This true discovery is often hidden from the view of the men of science. This is not to say that scientists are denied the knowledge of the true meaning and purpose of life. They have every right to discover that for themselves, just as saints do. However, unless the realization dawns that science in all its glory is only a study of the reflection and not a study of the absolute, this knowledge must perforce remain beyond their reach. Acknowledging these limitations of the scientific endeavor, Harry Emerson Fosdick said, "On every road where science starts to walk with us, sooner or later we come to the place where science has to stop, but where we have to go on." That is why the quantifiable actualities of science have never become qualitative. Swami Vivekananda duly pointed out this fallacy when he said in the 1893 Parliament of World Religions, "Manifestation and not creation is the word of science." Perhaps this explains the worldwide protest and condemnation of cloning of living beings, because even this miracle of science cannot avoid the ultimate fate, death and decay. This only reveals the transient nature of scientific advancement and the ignorant efforts that dabble with perishable matter, while highlighting the permanence of the spiritual quest, which after all seeks to unravel the mystery of the eternal. The realization of the eternal consciousness that enlightens and enlivens this world is not the restricted, limited consciousness of the individual. It is the cosmic consciousness, the totality of consciousness, better understood in the context of water in general, as opposed to water of this picture or water of that picture, which only represents a narrow and divided entity. The base of scientific pursuit is that it restricts itself to the body of matter, that is, attributes and fails to perceive that which is provenly present, the cosmic consciousness. It is towards this realization of the holistic concept that all human efforts need to be directed. The realization of this objective reality transcends time, space and matter, thereby negating the detective scientific creed that living beings are nothing but aggregates of electrons, protons and neutrons. Amidst in vain discussions and disputations about spirituality, we are all ultimately missing the point. Beyond everything is God, and what's more, He is sweetness itself. Wouldn't it be much more spiritual and scientific to forgo the useless verbal tussle and enjoy that sweetness instead? The scientific and the religious perspectives on the meaning and purpose of life need not necessarily be divorced from each other. In studying matter, the scientist too is embarking on the same quest as the saint who studies the inner reality. Both need to open their eyes to that one fact that it is the same consciousness that pervades the inner and the outer world. I therefore conclude by calling for a synthesis of science, religion and humanity, with each of them retaining their respective identity. Science needs to be more spiritualized and religion needs to be endowed with scientific temper and approach so that new meaning and purpose of life can be defined in collective wisdom rather than in isolation and privacy. Yes, sir.